Welcome, Barry.
Hello, Dan.
How you doing? All right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks. Holding on in there.
Good, man. Thanks very much for joining me today.
No worries.
So let's get started. Give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do here at Greenacre.
So I manage the Midlands division, have done for just over 5 years. Recruited to the housing market for many more than that, about 17, I think, in about a week or two. Interesting times.
Yeah, very interesting times. And we want to talk today about some of the challenges that candidates will face when interviewing virtually. So we want to try and delve into some tips that people can take away and think about how to get themselves prepared, how to present themselves in the right way, and also how to showcase their talents to best effect. So give us a flavour of what you're hearing in the market, some of the examples that you've been speaking about recently, some of the good, some of the bad.
It's been interesting, really. I think, historically, we've always, this technology has always sort of existed. And in the interim market, often we ask people to travel further maybe than they would do for permanent roles. So interviewing, sometimes we're pulling people from 2-3 hours away to try and save that travel costs and whatnot. I've often suggested, what a Skype interview or Zoom, whatever. And pretty much 99% of the time it's been rejected. But necessity is the mother of invention, and I think we've certainly seen the last few weeks a lot more people who desperately need to bring people on going down this route, but it's all new for them, it's new for the candidate. So our role has been very much helping support through that function, helping to advise on the process on both candidate and client side. And it's been really interesting sort of experience, I think, the last few weeks. I suppose the first point would be about sort of familiarity with the technology. So whether you're getting used to using that, used to speaking to, a dot above your laptop. Sometimes they can be glitchy. So, you might have a slight delay. And if you are having a slight delay, make sure you're letting them know, because they might not have one on the other side. I suppose that one of the biggest bits is about getting over your personality, them being able to convey their personality, both as interviewers, but also as an organisation. So that cultural piece. So it's making allowances for that and understanding it might need to tailor your approach, tailor your questions sort of accordingly. Equally, interviewing's hard work anyway. It can be draining and tiring, probably more so. This way you don't have the travel there or whatever, so it's not as much of a physical effort, but actually mentally it can be quite draining, because you've got to work really hard to keep that engagement with a screen rather than face to face, because that's what we do naturally. So it's again understanding that it will be draining. And if you have been doing a number of sort of online meetings that many people are at the moment, make sure you build in some space before and afterwards to get yourself set up and also to decompress as well.
And there's been a number of examples recently where campaigns have required a virtual presentation, and we've heard real mixed feedback from that, because with an online presentation, if you're screen sharing, you can't see the people that are interviewing you, can't gauge their response, and that's much harder to do. Have you got any examples of where it's worked actually quite well, and what did that look like? How did they get that right?
Yeah, and funnily enough, the process we're working on sort of a couple of weeks ago had exactly that breadth of sort of experience, that there were people that were screen sharing, and yes, it shows you can use the technology and it's maybe a bit more simplistic of sort of an interaction, but it broke down people's sort of connections. So you didn't have the eye contact. If you're screen sharing, you can't see the person. And so that engagement that you've got to work really hard to get, you automatically lose. And when you're just looking at a presentation with nobody, if you've ever been on a webinar or whatever, it's really hard. Where it worked really well is that, and it actually gave the candidate an opportunity to take control of the interview a little bit. So they'd said, right, okay, I understand you want to sort of do a presentation. Do you mind if I email you the presentation so you can have it on another screen? I'll have it on another screen so we can still converse and you can ask me questions about that.
Yeah, because engagement is absolutely key when you're presenting, because you're trying to, as well as the content you're delivering, it's also about how you deliver it. They want to know how competent you are at conveying important messages. So over a screen, that's much harder to do.
And you can see what resonates with them. You can see where their visual ticks, probably more so than you can in a normal presentation, because you're focused on the screen. So if you can see that they're making a quizzical face, then actually you can address that and further explain. So you're not leaving anything to chance.
So moving on to some words of advice and some tips when it comes to preparing for interview, is there anything that the candidate should be doing differently?
Yes, equally there's everything that they should be doing the same as well. So you're almost adding another layer of presentation, of preparation, I would say. So still do the same things that you would do. Looking at the JD and person spec, try and think about what questions you're going to be asked, get to understand the organisation, the values, and all of that. Something I would also sort of suggest to people in face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, or whatever, is look into your interviewers, and that's not just who they are and what their background is, but look at, say, on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter, what are they talking about, what are they commenting on, just so you can understand what their drivers are. That's even more key now, because I think you've got to work harder for that engagement. So if you can find some common ground, then I think that's key. You don't have that small talk opportunity from reception up to the interview room of did you find us okay and whatever, and finding out a little bit about you. So maybe you need to get that into your actual interview. Those people who are a little bit more demure, a bit sort of more reserved, do have to work harder. So I think the way I sort of stated it is, you need to almost probably dial your personality up 10%. That's not to be crazy and arms waving all over the place, but just make sure you're sort of being a little bit more engaging, trying to just push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. Because we've had this situation just the other day where a candidate who would probably face-to-face work really well, but his personality is a little bit quieter. Now, face-to-face, that makes more sense. You can understand them better, but you lose some of the non-verbal tics that you'd see in across a desk from each other. Equally, there's other things that you can do to make sure that you're able to convey that. Now, we've got two very different backgrounds to us. I obviously have no personality. You obviously like nails.
There you go.
So if we were in this sort of situation, I'd maybe, as an interviewee, if there was the opportunity to comment on something from the background, what's your favourite nail colour? But equally, I'd probably use a more interesting background to what I've got. If it's going to be relevant, you see lots of these things on YouTube or whatever, where they've got lots of books behind them to make themselves look intelligent. You don't need to be as descriptive as that, but you can just give a flavour for who you are, whether that's a well-kept garden in the background, or whether that's some trophies from some sport that you're involved in, or it may well be some pertinent books, or whatever it is that can get across some more of your personality, a bit more of who you are, the essence of you. I think is key, and that's something you can't do face-to-face interview. You can't bring a box of your belongings along and say, look at what I've done.
No, that'd be a bit weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Picking up on your point about being authentic, being yourself, and showing your personality, it's also really important to try and understand the culture of the organisation that you're interviewing with. Can you give us some idea, again, some of the recent examples of where candidates have had to ask more specific questions because they're not physically going to the business, they're not being shown around, they're not necessarily meeting people face to face? It's harder to get that culture, hard to get the feel for the place. What sort of questions can be asked just to try and understand that a bit better?
I think it's really massively important, and it's massively important in the candidate's decision. I think people often forget that this is a two-way process. The clients are the companies are being interviewed as much as the candidates are, and you do have a choice about the right role. Often, maybe not right at the moment, but often people are interviewing at 2-3 different organisations. So there's an onus on them on the organisation to get that to come across and find ways to do that engagement. But from a candidate perspective, if I was to be asking questions, I would be very straightforward about it. I'd explain to them that usually I'd get a feel for your organisation. You know, when I turn up, I'd get to see the building. I'd see what the welcome was like from reception. I'd see how colleagues are interacting on my way through to the office. Now, all of that is going on in the back of your mind, and you're making a judgment on that organisation.
Yeah.
I don't have that opportunity. So in this situation, so I'd be upfront and say, look, I don't have this opportunity. This is how I'd usually be assessing you. However, you know, so can you tell me, you know, what does it feel like to work for whoever it is, or, you know, what is it about working at this organisation do you enjoy? Equally, things like different sort of questions, and obviously now at the moment we're still on lockdown, but we've obviously gone through this process, and it's going to change the sector forever moving forward in you know, greater or lesser extent. So I think it's a really key time to get a feel for what kind of an organisation this is when it's in a crisis. So, you know, how have you adapted over the last few weeks? How's it been? What's it been like to work there during this time? How quickly were you able to, you know, to make sure that all of your employees were working in a safe environment, or to, you know, to be working agile? Are you proud of the response? It gives you a feel for not only the culture of the organisation, how agile they can be, but equally the speed of decision making, the type of leadership that you'd be working with.
Absolutely. And trying to understand their approach to developing and retaining talent as well. So to get a feel for how they treat people. Yeah. So when they have made this adjustment, what did they do to support people through it? How did they support people in their own personal well-being? Because all of the way they treat people in these times is very, very important as well. Any final thoughts, any final words of advice, Barry, in terms of preparing or executing one of these virtual interviews?
A little bit of a sneaky bit of advice, but don't tell the organisations this. So this is just between me and you, yeah?
Of course.
So one of the benefits of interviewing like this is that you can take your crib sheets in. So I wouldn't say to have that down on the desk in front of you, because that's going to break your engagement if you're looking down. However, you can put post-it notes, little prompts around your screen, or alternatively, if you've got a wall behind your monitor, you can put some of your notes up there. Now, you know, some people would think that's cheating. It's not, because you have written it all down before anyway. All it's doing is making sure that you're not walking out of an interview and going, I should have said such and such, which I hear probably on a daily basis from sort of interview feedback. So a little cheat for you there. Sound
advice, Barry. Sound advice. Well, look, thank you very much indeed. We've also written a good practice guide on our website, so please check that out. That's greenacre-recruitment.com. And thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.